Well, good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday morning. I forgot to make any comment on the fact, obviously, I wasn't with you on Monday. It was Labor Day. I was working on one of my old cars. I got the coolest old car. I've got a 64 Ford Fairlane Sport Coupe. Okay. Now, if you're not into cars, this won't mean a thing in the world to you. But I know that there are a lot of guys out there that watch my videos who are gearheads. Okay, so and by the way, don't forget September the 15th, I'll be debating a gearhead, Anthony Aquino. He and I will be debating the subject of the millennium. Anthony is a historic premillennialist. He believes that the millennium is yet future, will begin at the second coming of Christ. I believe that the millennium was a 40-year period approximately that was consummated in the first century, ended in the first century. And so, anyway, he's a gearhead. He's a Mustang guy. That means he's a good guy, right? Yeah, you can see back here on my shelves. What are those? Those are Mustangs. Love the Mustangs. But anyway, I've got this really cool 64 Ford Fairlane. I've owned about four of them in my lifetime. And this car is totally rust-free. And I've already got it built, a 347 stroker with a Speedway built C4 transmission, built to withhold about 900 horsepower. I'm not going to do anything crazy like that. But Monday, I installed a 350 positive track rear end in it. And I also, last week, I went to a flea market. I managed to buy a set of mags that I've got to put on it. So yeah, pretty cool. I'm making some really good progress on that. So I'm kind of excited about that particular little car. Some of you have asked me to post some pictures. I'd have to make a special video on that to post some pictures of my cars on YouTube. And I don't know, I may do that one of these days. All right. Back to the Olivet Discourse. This will be our final video on the subject of the birth pangs of Messiah. And I simply want to make two summary statements about it. I'll try to keep this video very short. I'm not going to go 20 minutes on it. I say that sometimes and I don't keep my word, right? Anyway, point number one. Jesus, when he referred to the wars, the rumors of wars, the famines, the earthquakes, the peril of the pestilence, etc., said, these are the beginning of the birth pangs. Well, just recently, a former preterist who knows that if those events truly were the birth pangs of Messiah, he knows that the birth had to take place in that generation. Because, after all, are you going to extend the birth pangs of Messiah for 2,000 years? Seriously? In Isaiah chapter 66, the Lord, in foretelling the destruction of Jerusalem that occurred in AD 70, that's the context. The Lord says, shall I bring to the time of birth and not bring forth? Well, it's a rhetorical question, meaning, no. When the time of the birth comes, when the birth pangs begin, in other words, deliverance will come. Now, by the way, you might want to go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and just in the search tab, just look up Isaiah chapter 66, birth pangs of Messiah, something like that. I have a series of articles on Isaiah chapter 66 showing it's the background, part of the background, for Jesus' allusion to the birth pangs to bring forth. And again, Yahweh in Isaiah 66 says, shall I bring to the time of birth and not bring forth? Well, guess what? Jesus said the appointed time was in the first century. Jesus said these events that we've enumerated numerous times were the beginning of the birth pangs. So, this former preterist says, well, it's not really birth pangs. It's just pangs. And again, the only reason he's saying this is because he realizes That to admit that the birth pangs of Messiah, the birth pangs of salvation, the birth pangs of the kingdom, the resurrection, etc., if those were in the first century, you cannot extrapolate that out for 2,000 years. Although this same individual says, you know what, the Great Tribulation's been going on for the entirety of the Christian age. Now, he's not alone in that. Greg Beale takes that position. Craig Blomberg takes that position. Some others take that position, but I have to tell you, it's one of the most facetious, facile, and false claims that I have ever read in my life. More on that when we talk about and we summarize on the Great Tribulation. But here's the problem. Jesus said these are the beginning of birth pangs. So this former preterist says, no, it's not birth pangs, it's just simply pain. It's just simply tribulation. Well, here's the problem with that. There had been lots and lots and lots and lots of times of pain and tribulation before those events that took place in the first century. And yet Jesus is clear that he was talking about his apostles, talking to his apostles, saying they would see all of these things take place. They would see the earthquakes, famines, pestilence, false teachers, etc. And they were to know these are the beginning, not the continuation of centuries-long, millennia-long tribulations and pain. No, these are the beginning of the birth pangs. This argument by this former preterist is just another example of argumentum ad desperatum. He is so desperate to avoid the clear statements of the Bible that he literally just mixed things up. Okay? These are the beginning. And by the way, virtually every single translation of Matthew chapter 24, verse 9 and 10, verse 9 especially, 8 and 9, render this birth pangs. Do they all get it wrong? Now that's a legitimate question. Secondly, the nature of this tribulation, the nature of these birth pangs in regard to one specific area has to be honored. Now, let me read for you, from David Bentley Hart's translation. I've read some from it for you lately. I'm going to begin with verse 7. Nation will be raised against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places, but all these are the beginning of birth pangs. Then they will deliver you over to affliction and will kill you. You will be hated by all the Gentiles on account of my name. Now, if one leaves it at that, then he would get the impression, well, this is just Gentile persecution. Well, number one, he's talking about his apostles. He's not talking about the church timelessly. He is speaking to his 4 apostles who were with him on the Mount of Olives and says they, who is this they? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Is it going to involve some Gentiles? Evidently, you'll be hated of the Gentiles. Pardon me. Something about my studio here. I didn't take a Claritin this morning either. So anyway, speaking to his 12 apostles, he said, they, whoever that they might be, will deliver you to afflictions. That's thlipsis. Means pressure. It means persecution. And you will be hated by all of the Gentiles. Okay. Luke chapter 21, verse 12 narrows this down for us. It doesn't exclude any element of Matthew chapter 24. I'm not saying that, not suggesting it. But what I am saying, what I'm pointing out, is that there is an element of this persecution that those who say, such as the former preterist, These are the beginning of birth pangs. It's going to last throughout the Christian age. And it's always been with us. No, remember the beginning of birth pangs. But secondly, in Luke chapter 21 and verse 12, Jesus said they will deliver remember, who is the they? Well, we're going to be told. They will deliver you up to the synagogues and before kings and before governors. You know, folks, that doesn't fit modern day times. It doesn't fit 21st century. Are there a few kings in this world? Well, a few. Not many. Do governors have the authority of imprisoning Christians today? Well, you know, as much as our society in America is evolving and growing increasingly anti-Christian, nobody has that authority right now. It's absolutely horrid what's going on from the president down as the attacks on Christian liberty are attacked more and more and more. The point? Jesus is talking about first century deliverance of the apostles to the synagogues, to kings, to governors, those who are in authority, those who had the authority to put them to death. Look, folks, read Acts 21 through 26. Who is Paul delivered to? Oh, the Sanhedrin, Jewish authority. He was delivered to Felix, to Festus, to Agrippa for trial for his belief in Jesus and the resurrection. Do you get the point? All of these things, these beginning of sorrows, ladies and gentlemen, had to do with Jewish persecution. So if you're going to say, well, these are just tribulations, these are just simply pains, and they're just going to stretch out for thousands of years, then you must take the position there had never been any pains before that generation. Never been any tribulation before that generation, which, by the way, this same former preterist is quick to point out there were tribulations in the Old Testament period of time. So he contradicts himself, as usual. But secondly, unless you're willing to extrapolate Jewish persecution of the church for 2,000 years, ongoing persecution in front of Sanhedrin, synagogue, kings, governors, etc., this only fits the first century. So our summary of the context and concept of the birth pangs of Messiah point us directly to the first century and the period of time before the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. Okay, out of time. Thank you so much for joining me on this morning musings. I will see you again on Friday morning as we continue our review, response, and refutation of Steve Gregg's book. I'll see you there.